Faith can lead us down hopeful paths and create a bright future. However, it can be hard to get started. How do you continue having faith in every aspect of your life? How do you act in faith when you can't see a specific outcome? How do you lead others with faith when you possess the same knowledge as everyone else? Someone who faced these same questions is the man our school is named after, Brigham Young. Welcome to the BYU-Idaho Roots of the Mighty Oaks podcast. I'm your host, Eden Rowe, and here we talk about the history of BYU-Idaho and how it applies to us today. The stories shared during this podcast are true, and they can help us understand and appreciate how BYU-Idaho became our beloved institution. Brigham Young was the epitome of faith in action. Even from the start of his life, he had to work hard and provide for his family. He was born to John and Abigail Young on June 1st, 1801, in Whittingham, Vermont. His mother sadly died from tuberculosis when Brigham was 14 years old. His father was a strict but good man. Brigham grew up learning the importance of teamwork in his family and how to be resourceful from his father. His family didn't have a lot of money. They learned how to be frugal. On one occasion in his childhood, Brigham's father left to collect some supplies. The family unfortunately only had maple sugar in the house and nothing else to eat. Though Brigham was the 9th out of 11 children, that night he took responsibility for feeding himself and his brothers. Brigham went out and shot a robin for them to feast on. When Brigham was 16 years old, his father told him that he was now able to provide for himself. So Brigham left his house and stayed with one of his sisters in Auburn, New York, where he developed many trades, including painting and glazing. But he was mostly known for his exceptional skills as a carpenter. His career as a carpenter eventually led him and his wife, Miriam Works, to the place where Brigham's father settled, in Mendon, New York. There, Brigham built a house for his family and a shop where he sold furniture that he made. Life grew to be complicated when Miriam fell deathly ill. At that time, Brigham had 2 daughters. He took care of all the housework, looked after his wife and daughters, and on top of that, continued to run his shop to the best of his ability. It seemed like he couldn't possibly have time for anything else. But for the gospel of Jesus Christ, he made time. It was during this overwhelming time of his life, one of his brothers, Phineas, introduced him to the Book of Mormon. Phineas had brought a copy from Samuel Smith, and he wanted to share the messages with his family. For 2 years, Brigham consistently read the book and met with the missionaries. He became fully converted on April 15, 1832. Brigham Young showed his faith and dedication by being baptized on a cold, snowy day in his backyard mill stream. Later on, various members of his family were baptized, including his wife Miriam. A few months after they were baptized, Miriam passed away from the very thing that took Brigham's mother, tuberculosis. Though Brigham was now a widower and he had to tackle everything alone, he remained positive and determined. His conversion to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints helped him grow a deep-rooted testimony of the prophet Joseph Smith. And though he had yet to meet him, he felt prompted to go out and teach others about this rich doctrine. Some of Brigham's friends that he made during the time of his conversion, Heber C. Kimball and his wife Philate Kimball, joined the church in 1832. And like Brigham, they were willing to do whatever they could to support the gospel. Brigham Young's desire to go out and preach was supported and made possible by the Kimball family. He left his 2 daughters in their care and went out to share his religion with people from neighboring towns around their home in Mendon, as well as up to Canada. One of his trips led to one of the most momentous occasions for Brigham, the first time he got to meet the prophet. Brigham, along with his brother Joseph and his friend Heber, met Joseph Smith in Kirtland, Ohio. They stopped by his home in hopes of meeting him and were informed that Joseph was out chopping firewood. Brigham explained their interaction.
We immediately repaired to the woods, where we found the prophet and 2 or 3 of his brothers chopping and hauling wood. Here my joy was full at the privilege of shaking the hand of the prophet of God, and received the sure testimony by the spirit of prophecy that he was all that any man could believe him to be, as a true prophet.
His encounter with the prophet started a beautiful friendship. In 1833, Brigham sold his home and shop that he built to follow the prophet's words about gathering in Kirtland, Ohio. Though this would be a tremendous change for him and his family, he had faith that following the prophet would only lead to the best things. He continued to follow the prophet throughout his life. While living in Kirtland, he met a wonderful woman, Mary Ann Angel. The two fell in love and were married in 1834. Together, they supported one another and their family. Brigham spent his time helping other saints reach safety, both spiritually and physically, while Mary Ann supported him by looking out for their family. During his time living in Kirtland, he and other men were asked to help the saints in Missouri. The persecution was brutal in that area for Latter-day Saints. Multiple homes and stores had been destroyed by mobs. The governor of Missouri promised he would assist the saints to get their homes back if he had help. So Joseph Smith organized a group of volunteers to head out to meet up with the governor. Brigham and Heber volunteered and were appointed as captains over this mission. The group became known as Zion's Camp. Joseph Smith promised Brigham that if he kept the prophet's counsel, he would come back unharmed. On their way to Missouri, the governor unfortunately decided to back out of his promise. It got worse when an angry mob started heading for Zion's Camp in hopes of destroying them. However, a miracle came as a brutal storm came through and stopped the mob from reaching the men. Around this time, the camp also faced cholera and lost a few men. Volunteers were losing hope, and they felt defeated. The prophet told the men that if they came together in humility by humbling themselves, and if they listened to his words, the cholera would stop spreading. The men did come together, and eventually they were able to return home without further problems. Zion's Camp was seen as a failure to a lot of people, but Brigham learned from it the importance of following the prophet and seeing God's hand in everything. When others asked what he gained from it, he was very opinionated. He wasn't going to let people complain to him or question the prophet.
I told those brethren that I was well paid with heavy interest, yea, that my measure was filled to overflowing with the knowledge that I had received by traveling with the prophet.
Shortly after Zion's Camp, Brigham was appointed as a member of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles. He spent his time serving God in numerous ways. He continued to serve various missions. He was asked to use his expertise in handiwork and help paint and finish the Kirtland Temple, and he was heavily involved in moving the saints to various places due to persecution. When Joseph Smith was martyred, Brigham Young continued in faith, knowing this wasn't the end of the church. He and other members of the 12 created plans for an exit from their home in Nauvoo, Illinois, and to finish the Nauvoo Temple before they left. When they were ready to head out, Brigham and other church leaders led the saints across to various locations, which resulted in multiple settlements being created. A lot of this was happening without a prophet. In fact, between the time of Joseph Smith's death on June 27, 1844, to when Brigham was appointed as the second prophet of the church on December 27, 1847, 3 years and 182 days passed. The church stayed together during that time because of their faith and the faith their leaders had in God. Brigham Young and his family ended up settling in the Salt Lake Valley. 4 days after they arrived there, he was already focused on building the kingdom of God. He drove his cane into the ground and proclaimed, "Here will be the temple of our God." The Salt Lake City Temple stands today in the exact place that Brigham marked. I often think about the faith and trust that Brigham and the saints had in the Lord. The saints were used to various climates, but a desert would be a first for them. It was no secret that the members of the church were not wealthy. They didn't have money to pay for extravagant things, and they were now in various locations. Most were in a desert that was hard to sow and plant. But Brigham encouraged them that this was the land God had in store for them, and with hard work, it could become a beautiful Zion. The early Latter-day Saints started working in the various locations they had settled in to create a safe community. The Salt Lake Temple was a huge focus point as saints came together to build the magnificent building. But the temple wasn't the only push Brigham was making. He urged the saints to pursue a higher education. His goal was to create various schools that would encourage the community of saints to reach bigger dreams and help one another grow and build a respectable community. His push not only helped lead to the development of our own institution here in Rexburg, But it also helped form 2 additional universities in Utah, the University of Utah and Brigham Young University. On February 28, 1850, the University of Deseret was formed. The idea behind this university was that everyone of various financial backgrounds could attend. It was the first university west of the Mississippi River. Before a physical campus was built, classes were taught in various homes. Eventually, a permanent building was erected east of the Salt Lake Valley, and in 1892, the school was renamed the University of Utah. Over time, Brigham Young continued to pursue and adapt the church's role in higher education. He wanted to develop a new system of schools that promoted spiritual education as well as classroom education. So he worked with and appointed Carl G. Mazer to take over an academy that the church had bought and to oversee its changes. Brother Mazer started up the Brigham Young Academy in 1875 and served as the second principal for the academy for 16 years. Together, he and Brigham started forming other academies in areas that were highly populated with church members. Lots of planning, preparation, and at times failure went into these projects. Even though he grew up learning trades instead of having a formal education himself, Brigham felt that saints should be given the opportunity he didn't have. He had a love for education and the members of the church, and it's clear through his legacy that we have today. Brigham Young Academy eventually became Brigham Young University in 1903. Today, the church has 3 universities named after him: Brigham Young University, Brigham Young University, Idaho, and Brigham Young University, Hawaii. Brigham Young spent his life making the most of what he had. His close and strong relationships with God gave him the strength to move forward in faith. He, like all of us, couldn't always see the direct path he should take, but he was determined to keep his sights set on God and to move on acting in faith. When we don't know what to do, it's important to remember that God loves effort. When we at least try, we're showing Him that we have faith. Faith created our school. It has created opportunities for all of us to exercise faith and eventually inspire faith and hope for others. Everyone has the opportunity to walk in faith and to lead in faith. Don't wait around to be acted upon. Go out and continue to have faith. Thank you for listening to the Roots of the Mighty Oaks podcast. This episode has been produced and read by BYU-Idaho communications student Eden Rowe.